Phenomenal, guys. Again, thank you everyone for having me here. So it's an absolute delight, to be around. And I think one interesting bit for today is that, it's an absolute clean slate. The bad part about starting after Prabkiran is there's hardly anything to add, right? So you might end up seeing a lot of repetition from my side, but I'll prefer and take that luxury and at least continue with the thought process that I had. So very quick, background about myself. Predominantly an engineer from IT Delhi, 2001 batch. I did my first startup way back in 2004. So, much before, startup was actually a very cool thing to do, right? And so we created an interesting product, sold it to a global ad network. Then we started one of the earliest education technology companies in the country. Ended up raising a lot of money. Learned the power of timing. Learned when to do things at the right time at the right place. Exited that in 2012. Then I ran a Swiss incubator for a couple of years, and then the journey for Clovia has begun. And ever since, it has kind of been an absolute delight. To give you guys a very quick background about Clovia, about what we do, who we are. Predominantly, Clovia is a personal care brand, and predominantly it's a personal care brand for women. We are trusted by almost 3.5 million women. That's 35 lakh women across the country. The business is north of 300 crores now, in a category which started predominantly with lingerie, but over a period of time, we started adding activewear, shapewear, loungewear. Recently, we added beauty and personal care to our mix as well. And so we, much like Bewakoof, we have been a true D2C brand where almost 55 to 60% of the business is coming from our own store, which is clovia.com, which is a site in the app. And then, of course, we have marketplaces where we sell from. And then over a period of time, we did go to the omni-channel strategy as well. And, maybe some aspect of it, which I'll cover, in time, to give you a little sense on the scale of the business in terms of volumes. We would be shipping a piece almost every 2.5 seconds, so literally it's like, I just sold a piece, so I think that's the power of what D2C is driving. And I remember 2015 when we launched Clovia as a brand, the biggest question everybody would continue asking us over and over again is that, how big can this become? And recently I put a post on LinkedIn saying that, first you asked me how big can this become, and 6 years later, it's 3.5 crore pieces that we have sold. And it's still just the, somewhat of a beginning, right, so to speak, because the real action is just about to begin. So I think that gives us in a very, a very interesting place. This has not been a simple journey, especially in the category like ours. Lingerie by design is a very, very complex category. Even in the entire apparel spectrum, it is, by far the most complex product, both in terms of technology. It's a very difficult product. So it will take almost anywhere from, 30 to 46 pieces to make a single piece of bra, for example, on one side. And on the other side, the interesting bit is that, quite unlike, a typical t-shirt, which is an SML XL, or a vest, which is a 90-95 100, or a ethnic suit, which is again an SML XL. A bra would also have the cup sizes, right? So it would be like 32, 34, 36, and then ABCDF. So the plethora of sizes that kind of comes into play is humongous, right? And you kind of couple that with the way India is as as a country, where different parts of the country will have very different kind of body requirements. It'll have a very different kind of seasonality, a very different kind of taste in product also, because there is a certain amount of element of fashion. So that will give you a little bit of a flavor of how complex this is as a product. Why this is important to understand is because the whole pretext of what I'm about to talk about also kind of depends on this. So we, so by the way, this is a great opportunity because it's a clean slate, right? So, I have 10 minutes to literally talk about anything and everything, which puts it in a very interesting place. So I think a lot of it will be repetition, but at least, I'll at least walk you through what we feel has to be a typical D2C brand journey, what it has been for us, what has been our learnings, and, what does it do, which is different, today, vis-a-vis all the action that has been going on for the last, 70, 80 years in terms of the consumption across the country. So very short interesting story is that in 2012-13, when we were about to research the category, our only question again and again to ourselves was that at that point also there were almost, I think that point in time there were already 2 or 3 listed players. Today there are four listed players in the men's innerwear category, and still in the women's space there is literally no one, right? And our question to ourselves was that, why there are 1,000 crore brands, 4,000 crore brands in the men's innerwear space, but nothing in the women's innerwear space. And what is it that is keeping it? Is it demand, which is less? The answer was no, because, some of the, bigger guys were growing on the back of, who had actually cracked the women innerwear, were growing on the back of women's innerwear. So our question was again and again to ourselves, what is it that kind of keeps them away from, from typically, let's say a men's category? And the interesting question, answer to that question was predominantly, it turned out to be distribution. And I'll pause here, and I'll just come back to say that, we've been talking about this new wave of D2C, which seems to be disrupting anything. I mean, it's literally, all the way from health food to even bicycles or everything. Everything is D2C, everything is cool, right? So what it started for us literally was not as an experimentation because it was cool. It wasn't because it was fundable. It was literally out of a need, because we realized that there is no other way to do this business, and in a profitable way. And in fact at the time when we all were doing, and for example, it's good to be kind of coming after Prabhakaran, because we are one of the both of us are the earlier players in the category, where when we started, D2C was not a very cool thing, right? It wasn't that funky as it is right now, right? And we all went through challenges where everybody would ask that, can this channel be as big, as you perceive it to be? And we always stood our ground, and we said, yes, if there is any way to grow at least a category like ours, it's going to be that channel. And we are absolutely glad that, that we took that punt and we took that call, because of the results that we've all seen. So in fact even today, I have a very very firm view when somebody starts to talk about D2C brands, and call, for example, somebody was talking to me. So earlier, the biggest challenge when people used to call us, "Are you a private label?" And I would make them literally sit down and say, "Boss, private label is when an online or an offline retailer or any sort of a multi-brand retailer creates another brand to improve their gross margins, right? It's a private labeling that they do to kind of push their product, right? We are a brand, and that was one thing that kept on harping till till kingdom come. And today, I think the biggest question that I keep answering people is when they say that, are you an online brand? So it's very important for you to decouple both. So are you a brand or you're not a brand? That's one question. And are you present online, or what channel are you present on is different. Because if you're a brand on a certain channel, then effectively you're saying that you're not a brand. You are a channel. You are somebody who pushes a product on a channel with a certain labeling, right? So I think the definition of D2C all of a sudden then becomes very important, and that's the reason why I'm kind of bringing this to the core. Um, so for example, let's talk about what D2C is, right? I mean, so and again, D2C is anybody who takes their product directly to the end consumer, right? It's something as simple as that, right? And for example, if somebody was an exclusive brand outlet, and he was selling to the customer, which people, which brands have been doing forever, right? There's certain brands which just talk to the customer directly through their offline retail stores. So they are direct to consumer as well, right? Today, when we look at D2C and e-commerce together, we somehow perceive that direct to consumer is predominantly an online player alone. So I think that's one very important aspect to understand, that a D2C brand is a brand which does not go through multiple channels and tries to reach to the end consumer as fast as possible, because that kind of opens up a much bigger canvas for the brand to operate in the way that they operate and what they do, right? So when we started, our biggest channel, as I said, was the distribution part of it. So now coming back to the Clovia story of what led to us, and that kind of gives a very interesting reflection of why I have been talking about D2C and distribution disruption as in the same breath. So in our category, the biggest challenge, what we realized was for the people, was that it was very difficult to distribute. For example, if you have 40 sizes and you're going through a standard Standard business was go to a distributor and then you go to multiple retailers, and the retailer is one who sells the product to the end consumer. Retailer is the one who's basically the guy who calls the shots. And most of the brands were trying to do this in the exact same fashion, right? In a product which is 40 sizes, whenever somebody tried to do this in a structured way, in a distributed mechanism, if you were to scale very quickly, all of a sudden you'll start realizing that in a city where most of the people were actually using, let's say, C cups, or most of the people who actually liked colored product, you were literally sending a black, white, or beige, or you were sending a different size, and saw a lot of cut sizes happening. You saw a lot of people not able to sell the right product. Similarly, we started realizing that the scale of this then all of a sudden becomes very constrained. So what people kept saying that this is an unorganized category, lingerie is an unorganized category. What we realized was that it was never unorganized. It was semi-organized, right? There were a lot of regional brands, 20, 30, 40 crore brands, which kind of took a certain region and were trying to, kind of capture that. They understood the ecosystem of that specific area. They were able to manage the distribution in that area. The moment when they tried to go to another region, they were again facing the same challenges. So, and in came direct to consumer. We said that internet is the biggest democracy in the world. What does democracy bring to the table? It brings equal opportunity to all, right? And if there is equal opportunity, then let the better product win, let the best product win. And that's the thesis that we all started with. And we said that whatever the biggest barrier to entry which the traditional brands were creating, which was the distribution, we saw a way for that to get disrupted. And we said that is that a way, where things can start to happen, on their own. Because what we wanted to do was very simple. We said that I will not go with 2 sizes in multiple geographies. I would want to go with 40 sizes with different body types, with different requirements, and go out to the entire country. And what a direct channel to the end consumer ended up doing for us was exactly that. It gave us an opportunity to kind of execute the same. So I think for us, the biggest killer that happened here was predominantly that they were to disrupt the distribution ecosystem. And that brought us to the second step, which is, once you have understood how the distribution works, how do you utilize it? How do you understand and learn from the customer and behave in a certain way? So that brings us to question number 2, that what is it that makes direct to consumer a very powerful approach, right? So I would say the power of direct to consumer predominantly lies in 2 things. One is in the name itself. You are directly connected to the end consumer. So the power that feedback brings to the table is absolutely out of the park, right? I mean, in our category, when we were interviewing people, we were trying to understand, how does a stylist get feedback from the end consumer? The best that I heard was that we talk to the retailer on a weekly basis, or somebody said that, distributor, we talk on a quarterly basis. Nobody was even speaking to the end consumer. And that was the reason people were just making black, white, beige, restrictive products, which were only going to a certain section of the ecosystem. So today, what we have as an ecosystem is that, when you go out, the moment you buy a product from us, a week after it's delivered to you, you'll get a small email where you'll have to answer a bunch of questions about the product. If you answer them, we'll kind of, acknowledge that, respect you for that, send you a little coupon or a gift, for as somewhat of a thank you note. And that kind of helps us capture the insight about the product, right? And we have an internal ecosystem, which we call the monk. It's a sensei with the 6th sense, which basically understands the speed at which the product is traveling in terms of consumption and the feedback that it's getting. And that feedback score basically decides whether I will thank this product, I will make it again. What it ended up doing was it literally made the ecosystem so democratic that before I could decide, or my stylist or my design, the battery of design, stylists that we have, the designers that we have in the ecosystem, none of them were taking the calls. It was the customer who was taking the call of what work will work and what will not work. So that is the power of democracy of being directly connected to the end consumer on one front. And the other power that is that all of a sudden, direct to consumer has brought product back into the picture, right? So for the longest period, product was the, was that neglected second born, right? Distribution was the first born and product was the second born. Once you created a product, there is no need to innovate, because if you are at 30,000 touch points, nobody else is able to touch you. You have no reason to disrupt it, right? Today, there are women who are sitting in their house creating a magical product, and and they are ready to ship it out, to the end consumer, and with 900 cities, 18,000 pin codes right there available for them at day zero. I think that's the power that has gotten unlocked, and that has started entrepreneurs to start putting up their product hats than a business hat, and because they understood that if my product is good, the business will get formed on its own. And I think that's one fundamental change, that has happened in this ecosystem. And I think that's one fundamental change that is creating a lot more beauty in the ecosystem, than we initially perceived. So I think that's there. And of course, third is technology. I think what technology has ended up doing, to the ecosystem is exceptional, right? I mean, think of it that, if you were to go to a store, if 10 people walked into a store right away, either you will not have enough people or salesmen who could, or women who could kind of support the customer as a one-on-one support, or it will be too expensive to have that level of infra, but with technology, you can be that one-stop personalization expert engineer, that one AI assistant who can support you in kind of, helping you consume the product. So I think technology kind of opens doors for a lot more assisted purchase as well. And I think that is one thing which is still in the process of getting unlocked. I think over a period of time that will happen. And when that happens, it will happen in a much, much bigger way. And I think that is one opportunity that we are still, because right now we are moving from a product to distribution consumption perspective, but I think the whole personalization aspect is still, which is getting unlocked as we speak. Right. And of course, second is the inventory planning and things like those, because since you're directly connected to the customer, if you can set up engines like the one I was talking about, so for example, our inventory holding at any point of time will be 1/3 of the nearest competition, right? And predominantly because it's the technology that is driving, and human intervention has gone away. When the business crossed, 200 crores of sale is when we hired our first planner. The business was literally being planned by the technology on its own. So a few last quick points that I would want to kind of throw out there is, I think one big question that keeps rising is that how is D2C going to fight the old age, the legacy brands, the big daddies who have existed out there for the longest period, and what does it hold? It's great, it's a great starting point, we're all excited, there's whole excitement about the category, but how does that unlock things? And I think they're it's as simple as that, there are 100-year-old institutions here with multi-billion dollars in revenue, but there are 1,000 crore D2C brands which have already started to happen, right? And it has happened in a miraculous time frame, right? There are people who are literally challenging the status quo, that they're making the old brands look at themselves and say, hey, what is it that I need to change now? But you have to understand that these are great organizations with great cultures, with great fundamentals, so it's not something that you will take lightly. All said and done, I think there are multiple moats that at the D2C business can have. And, one is feedback and listening to the customer. Other is the data that you constantly capture. And third is the power of the product speed that you can, the mind to market of how you can constantly keep fighting the war so fast that it makes the catch-up game become very difficult, right? For example, in our category, 12 products used to happen in a season. Today we do almost 50 to 75 in a week. So that's the kind of disruption that has happened, over a period of time. So I think from a building moat perspective, you have to constantly listen to the voice of the customer. You have to become bigger, better, stronger. You have to use technology as your end potential. You have the data, but frankly, it doesn't matter how much data you have. I think it's a function of how much data can you harness. And I think that's the way, most of the people should think about. Third is, of course, the product speed. And fourth is, don't constrain yourself on a channel, right? Which is my next and probably the second last point. Don't constrain yourself on a channel. You are D2C, great, but you're a brand first, right? So if you are at one place and you are having a good time in an online scenario, there is no reason why we will not go to some other place where you still have sitting a customer, but that customer is not available to consume your product. So you should not kind of, constrain your thought process about, hey, this is who I am. You are a brand which is dedicated to providing your product to the end consumer. So either the customer comes to you or you reach out to the end customer is something that is a call that you have to take. For us, it's both, and that's why the offline business for us is, frankly, it's literally got from 0 to 15%, in a span of 12 months, when we launched it. So I think from an overcoming perspective, challenges of the bigger brands, I think one thought process is always that, US could never win the Vietnam War, right? And that was because, the Vietnamese understood their terrain a lot better, So what is your terrain is something that you'll have to understand. If you, and can you kind of play to your strengths in your terrain? I think that's the question you have to constantly ask yourself, which kind of makes things, spicy for you to constantly fight a bigger battle. Um, yeah, I think at last, but not the least, I think one big thing that we've started to introduce everywhere we go and we start talking about is that all of us have to start kind of thinking about, especially the D2C guys who are driving product today. We have to start thinking about sustainability. We have to start thinking about responsible production, responsible consumption. It's a long way to go because you may not have the right resources, but for us, for example, we have started to do it in our little way, because I think that will go a long way over a period of time. The brand which takes an early start there will reap the benefits in the future. So we at our end are doing our little bit to kind of make that happen. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you, Dr. Ragbatra. Thank you, Business World. It's a phenomenal opportunity to speak. It's not very often that you get an opportunity to just talk about anything that you want to. So yeah, great. I mean, that's pretty much from my side. Sincere wishes to all the people who are budding entrepreneurs building businesses. And congratulations to the customer. I think it's the best time, as a closing remark, all I can say, it's the best time to be a customer or a business, because consumption is exploding and will continue to happen.